Hey there. You've been asking about mindfulness and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT for short, and I'm excited to dig into those questions with you. You've got a great collection of resources here, and we're going to pull out the most interesting and insightful bits. So let's start with, well, I guess you could say the elephant in the room, mindfulness. You can't turn on the news or open a magazine or even like walk down the street without seeing it, right? Mindfulness has kind of become this buzzword, this trendy practice that's touted as the answer to like all our mental health woes.
Yeah, it's true. But it's actually gone beyond just the trendy label at this point. It's become a pretty serious area of research and practice. Researchers and therapists,
Yeah.
really, everyone's taking a closer look at its potential.
Totally. And it's not just about calming your mind anymore. We're actually learning how mindfulness can be a tool to address a wide range of mental health challenges. But here's the big question, the one that's been on my mind, and I'm sure it's on yours too. What exactly is mindfulness?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Uh,
We hear the term thrown around so much, but like, what does it actually mean,
yeah.
The Healthline article we have here defines mindfulness as, and let me get this right, the practice of gently focusing your awareness on the present moment over and over again.
Okay, so instead of pushing away thoughts, it's about noticing them and just, I don't know, just letting them be without getting carried away.
Exactly. It's about being present, like really present with your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, but without getting like caught up in judging them.
You know, that Healthline article has this really great analogy. It compares the mind to a willful toddler.
Oh, that's a perfect image, isn't it? Think about a toddler for a second. They're all over the place, grabbing at everything, wanting to like explore everything, but they haven't quite, learned to control their impulses yet.
Exactly. My mind definitely feels like that sometimes, always pulling me in different directions, always distracted.
And that's a good description, I think, of what we call a full mind. It's focused on the past, the future, anywhere but the actual present moment. Mindfulness is like, it's like teaching that toddler to just like sit still for a minute, to just observe, be aware of what's happening right now. It's gently guiding your attention back to the present whenever it decides to wander off, which, let's be honest, it does a lot.
So it's about being aware of your thoughts, feelings, and sensations without judgment, just letting them, I don't know, pass through like clouds in the sky.
Yes, it's about recognizing that you are not your thoughts. You don't have to believe every little thing that pops into your head.
Like being present without being overwhelmed by the present, letting your mind be more of a witness than like a participant. Right.
You got it.
Yeah.
And just that ability, just being able to observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment, it's a powerful tool in itself. When you dig into it, MBCT has some pretty interesting origins. It kind of grew out of this thing called mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR.
Oh, yeah. MBSR. I've heard of that.
Yeah, and that was developed by John Kabat-Zinn like way back in the 1970s.
Wasn't that initially used to help people cope with like chronic pain? I vaguely remember reading something about how it's used in hospitals and clinics and stuff.
You're right, yeah. Kabat-Zinn, he was working at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center, and he started incorporating these mindfulness practices into his work with patients who were, dealing with chronic pain. And what's interesting is that a lot of these patients weren't responding well to the traditional treatments. So I think Kabat-Zinn really saw this opportunity to like explore something different, something new.
So how did MBSR like evolve into MBCT then? It seems like it went from managing physical pain to like addressing mental health.
Right, right. And that's a good observation.
Mm.
The psychologists Zintel Segal, Mark Williams, and John Teasdale, they saw this potential, right? This potential of blending mindfulness with elements of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT as it's better known.
Oh, yeah, CBT, right.
And they believed that, by combining these approaches, they could create this powerful new tool for really addressing mental health challenges, not just stress.
So MBCT, it's kind of like this hybrid therapy. It takes the best of both worlds, mindfulness, and CBT puts them together.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it this way. So MBCT takes the engine of a race car, right, which is CBT's focus on like recognizing and challenging all those negative thought patterns.
Okay.
But then it combines that with the suspension of like a luxury car, which is mindfulness's ability to, to help you observe those thoughts without judgment. So you get a much smoother ride.
Okay, that's a great analogy. But how exactly does it work? What actually makes MBCT different from, just regular therapy? Because it seems like they're both trying to help you, like, manage your thoughts and feelings, right?
That's a really good question. And it gets right to the heart of what MBCT is really about. The key difference is that MBCT, it's designed to help you become aware of your thought patterns, but like before they spiral out of control,
Mm.
before they lead to all those really intense, negative emotions.
Hmm.
It's about changing your relationship to those thoughts, not necessarily the thoughts themselves.
So instead of just waiting for things to like get really bad, MBCT, it gives you the skills to sort of like catch those thought patterns early on.
Exactly. It's like having an early warning system for, your mental well-being.
Okay.
Imagine this. You start to feel, I don't know, a bit down, maybe a little anxious.
Hmm.
MBCT teaches you to recognize those really subtle signs of a potential depressive episode or even an anxiety attack before they take root.
So you're like interrupting those automatic negative thoughts, the ones that can like, send you into a downward spiral
Yep.
before they really gain momentum.
That's the idea. Instead of getting swept away by those thoughts, you learn to sort of like just observe them, but observe them with a sense of curiosity, acceptance, almost like watching cars go by on a busy street.
Right.
They're there, you acknowledge them, but you don't have to chase after them or let them, dictate your every move.
It's more about changing how you react to those thoughts rather than trying to like eliminate them altogether, which let's face is pretty much impossible, right?
You hit the nail on the head. MDCT recognizes that we're human. We can't just will ourselves to stop having negative thoughts. It's just not realistic.
Okay.
Instead, it gives you the tools to work with those thoughts, to change how you respond to them.
That's such a relief to hear because honestly, it's so easy to get caught in this cycle of self-criticism when you're struggling, right? You think, "Oh, I shouldn't even be thinking this way," and that just makes you feel worse.
Absolutely. It's a trap I think so many of us fall into.
Right.
But MBCT, it kind of offers this way out. It encourages you to look at those thoughts without judgment, with a sense of self-compassion.
Okay.
So instead of beating yourself up for having these thoughts, negative thoughts, you're learning to treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would, a close friend.
Yeah, it's like giving yourself permission to be human, right? You're acknowledging that it's okay to have these thoughts, these feelings, but you don't have to let them, define you.
Yeah, exactly. You're sort of separating yourself from your thoughts a bit, creating this like little bit of distance between yourself and the thoughts that are, passing through.
This actually reminds me of how we were talking about the mind being like a willful toddler earlier. So is MBCT almost like parenting your own mind in a way? Like you're teaching it to regulate its emotions, its reactions over time?
That's a fantastic way to put it. MBCT really is about developing this more compassionate, more balanced relationship with, our thoughts and feelings. Think of it as being a patient, loving parent to your own mind. You're learning to guide it with kindness and understanding rather than, criticism and judgment, which only lead to more distress in the long run.
Okay, so we've covered the why behind MBCT.
Mhm.
We've talked about the what it is, why it matters, but now I'm really curious about the how. What does an MBCT session even look like? What kind of techniques are we talking about here? So the Very Well Mind article, it actually goes into some of the techniques they use in MBCT, and one that really caught my eye was this thing called the body scan. Have you ever tried that?
Yeah, the body scan, that's like a core mindfulness exercise. It basically involves bringing your awareness to different parts of your body, just systematically, like bit by bit. You usually start with your toes, and you just slowly move your attention upwards all the way to the top of your head.
Okay, so it sounds simple enough, but knowing my mind, I can already imagine it like wandering off to my to-do list or like what I need to pick up at the grocery store.
Oh, absolutely, especially at the beginning. Yeah, that's totally normal. The mind's going to wander. It's what minds do, right? The practice is really about just gently guiding your attention back to the body scan, back to the sensations you're feeling. It could be warmth, tingling, pressure, tightness. Just noticing them without labeling them good, bad, or anything like that.
Just becoming like an observer of your own body, just
Yeah.
like tuning into those physical sensations without getting caught up in, any stories about them.
That's a great way to put it. And what's amazing is that, even just this simple practice, this practice of bringing awareness to the body, it can be incredibly helpful, like for managing stress, anxiety, even physical pain in some cases.
Yeah, and the Very Well Mind article, they also talked about like mindful stretching, yoga, that kind of thing as being a part of MBCT. And it makes sense, right, to incorporate movement, bringing attention to how your body feels as it moves and stretches.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think what's really interesting about MBCT is that it's not just about those like formal exercises, like the body scans, the yoga, that kind of thing.
Mm.
It's about it encourages this kind of like integrating mindfulness into everyday activities, right?
Yeah.
It's about finding those moments of presence, but in the midst of our, our busy, crazy lives.
That sounds a lot more doable than I initially thought. Give me some examples, though. What kind of everyday activities can we actually turn into something more mindful? Well, think about just like the things you do every single day, almost on autopilot things like eating, walking, showering, even just like washing the dishes. These are all opportunities to bring in like a mindful awareness, right? So instead of rushing through your meal while you're like scrolling through your phone, which I'm guilty of too, try eating mindfully for once. Just, slow down. Savor each bite. Pay attention to the taste, the texture, even like the aroma of your food. Notice how your body feels as you eat.
Oh, okay. The multitasking during meals,
Yeah.
guilty of that. Okay, mindful eating is officially going on my list. What about like mindful walking? It sounds so simple, but I imagine it's probably harder to actually do than it sounds. It really is simpler than you might think. As you walk, just bring your attention to the sensations of your feet on the ground, the movement of your legs, the rhythm of your breath, maybe even the feeling of the air on your skin. Notice the sights, the sounds around you. Really just like engage your senses. The key, again, is to bring your attention back to the present moment, to the experience of walking, rather than just letting your mind wander off into thoughts about, I don't know, the past, the future.
It's like you're hitting the reset button on your mind,
Yeah.
bringing it back to the here and now instead of letting it like run on autopilot, like you were saying.
Exactly. And MBCT, it actually gives you the tools to do this. The Very Well Mind article, it mentions this 3-minute breathing space technique, which is basically this quick, easy way to bring yourself back to the present moment, no matter where you are or what you're doing.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for us though. How does this like 3-minute breathing space technique, how does it actually work?
It's incredibly simple, which is, I think, part of its beauty. First, you become aware, right?
Hmm?
You just check in with yourself. What thoughts are present? What emotions are you feeling? What physical sensations are you aware of in this moment? Then the second step is to kind of anchor your attention on your breath. You just feel the sensations of each inhale, each exhale. And if your mind wanders, that's totally fine. Just gently guide it back to your breath. And then finally, you expand your awareness outward. You notice the sensations throughout your entire body. And this whole thing, you can do it in as little as 3 minutes. You can do it anytime, anywhere.
That's amazing. It's like having this little like pocket-sized mindfulness toolkit that you just carry around with you everywhere.
That's a great way to think about it. And it highlights a really essential aspect of MBCT is an active approach, a participatory approach.
Mhm.
It's not just about, showing up for a therapy session once a week. It's not passive. Well, the real work happens, between sessions in how you actually integrate these mindfulness practices into your daily life.
Yeah, like any skill, right? The more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
Precisely. It's about making mindfulness a habit, a way of being, rather than just, oh, this is something I do for an hour on Tuesdays at 4 o'clock.
Oh.
It's about those small everyday moments of awareness, noticing, I don't know, the steam rising from your coffee cup or, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin, really truly listening to a loved one when they're talking to you. These moments, they're all around us just waiting to be noticed.
It's not about like becoming a mindfulness guru overnight or anything. It's about taking those small steps, making those gradual shifts in awareness that I guess, they can make a big difference over time.
You got it. And it's a journey, right? And like any journey, there will be bumps in the road, but with each mindful step you take, you're cultivating this deeper understanding of yourself, and you're really strengthening your ability to navigate, all those inevitable ups and downs of life.
Right. That's a really beautiful way to put it. And it actually makes me think about this incredible statistic that I came across when I was like prepping for our deep dive. You know how MBCT, how it was initially developed to help prevent relapse in people with depression?
Yeah.
Well, there was a study published in The Lancet, and it found that MBCT was just as effective as antidepressants in preventing relapse.
That is a significant finding, especially for, individuals who have really struggled with recurrent depression.
Yeah.
And it's not just one study. I mean, the
Yep.
research on MBCT's effectiveness for preventing these depressive episodes, it's really quite promising.
And what's even more amazing is that it can reduce the risk of relapse by almost 50%. That's huge. But I am curious, for those who are currently experiencing depression, in the thick of it, does MBCT offer any benefit to them?
That's a great question. And to be honest, it's one that researchers are still exploring. While MBCT was initially designed for relapse prevention, There were some promising studies suggesting that it could also be really helpful for individuals with active depression.
Yeah, the Very Well Mind article, it mentions a few of these studies, and it seems like the research is still, it's still emerging, but the early findings, they are pretty promising.
Yeah, and there's also this interesting article by Tickle et al.
Hmm.
That we have. It examined MBCT's effectiveness, but it looked at it in like real-world healthcare settings, so,
Mhm.
not just in research labs. And their findings actually show that MBCT, it really did effectively reduce depressive symptoms, and not just in people with recurrent depression, but in those with active depression as well.
So it's not just a theory then, it's actually being used out there and making a difference in people's lives. And it sounds like MBCT, it holds promise, beyond just depression as well. I remember reading about its potential applications for like anxiety disorders, bipolar disorder, even like chronic pain.
That's right. Researchers have studied it for a really wide range of mental and even physical health challenges. And it makes sense, I think, when you really think about it, because MBCT, at its core, focuses on building skills. Skills like mindfulness, self-awareness, non-judgmental acceptance. These are all skills that are incredibly valuable for navigating any kind of emotional or even physical distress, right? It's like
Mm.
building this toolbox of skills that you can use in really all areas of life.
Okay, so let's say, someone listening to this, they're interested and they want to try MBCT. What's the best way to get started? Is this something you can like, learn from a book or an app, or do you need to actually like find a therapist?
Well, while there are definitely like plenty of, helpful resources online, you can find books, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
If you're dealing with, some significant mental health challenges, I'd really strongly recommend finding a qualified MBCT therapist.
Mhm.
It's really important to have that guidance and that support as you, embark on this journey.
And how can someone, listening, how can they know if a therapist is actually qualified to provide MBCT? What should they look for?
There's such a good question. Um, I always recommend people look for therapists who've received, specific training in MBCT. There are like specialized training programs now. They're offered by, universities, other reputable institutions. Don't be afraid to ask potential therapists about their training, their experience with MBCT specifically. And of course, just like with any kind of therapy, finding a therapist that you really connect with, that you feel comfortable with, that's essential.
Right, that therapeutic relationship can make all the difference. So it's about doing your research, finding a therapist who's qualified, and then making sure that it's just a good fit.
Exactly. And the good news is that, MBCT is becoming more and more accessible. It's being offered in like so many different settings now, from, hospitals and clinics to even just community centers.
Yeah.
The Tickle et al. Article, it highlights that even like primary care settings are starting to incorporate MBCT into their services.
Wow, that's really encouraging to hear. It sounds like there might be options available even if you don't have, access to like more traditional mental health services.
Exactly. It's always worth, just exploring what's available in your local area. And don't be discouraged if you, don't find that perfect fit right away. It might take a little bit of searching.
This deep dive it's been fascinating. I mean, we've explored the what, the why, the how of mindfulness, MBCT, all of it. But, more than just like understanding it intellectually, I think this has like really sparked a curiosity in me, like a desire to actually explore these practices in my own life.
Well, it's been a real pleasure, sharing this exploration with you. And I really do hope our listeners are feeling that same spark, that same curiosity, that same like invitation to embark on their own mindfulness journey.
And you know what? Even if you don't, dive headfirst into like a full-on MBCT program right away, remember those small steps we were talking about earlier? Just incorporating even like just small mindfulness practices into your everyday life, It can be such a profound act of self-care, whether it's, that 3-minute breathing space or just like a mindful cup of tea in the morning, these little moments of presence. They can really ripple outwards, impacting not just our own well-being, but the well-being of those around us as well.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. It really is about, bringing more awareness, more kindness, more compassion in each moment. And honestly, who couldn't use a little more of that in their lives?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of mindfulness and MBCT. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Until next time, take care.